So today, we're going to flip the script on one of the biggest questions out there. We're not going to ask what the government knows about UFOs. Instead, we're asking why they might be so quiet about it. Let's really dig into the other side of this coin, the complex and maybe even understandable reasons for all the silence.
I mean, right now, the demand for UFO disclosure is absolutely deafening, isn't it? You see it everywhere. Congressional hearings, all over the news. The pressure is on. Everybody just wants them to open the files and tell us what's really going on.
But here's the tough question. We all kind of jump to the conclusion that secrecy means something bad, a cover-up. But what if it's actually about protection? In this explainer, we're going to explore that other side of the argument, the carefully built reasons for keeping what could be the biggest secret in all of human history.
All right, so let's peel back the first layer of this onion, and it's the most straightforward one. Good old-fashioned national security. We're not even talking about aliens yet. This is all about keeping an edge over our rivals right here on Earth.
To get this, you really got to go back to the time right after World War II. Suddenly, you have the birth of radar, jet engines, and of course, the atomic bomb. These were absolute game changers. And to protect them, a whole system of secrecy was created, a system that paid private companies tons of money to keep quiet and just keep inventing in the shadows. And that culture? Well, it never really went away. It got baked into the system.
And the core idea behind all this secrecy is something called lead time. Just imagine for a second, it's 1945. The US has the bomb, Japan doesn't. That gap, that lead time, that's what ended the war. We're talking about a situation where even a single day's advantage with some revolutionary piece of tech can be the difference between winning and losing. The only way you keep that advantage is with total secrecy.
Okay, so bring that thinking to today. Let's say the US government has its hands on some kind of recovered, non-human tech, or even if they just get the physics behind it. Spilling the beans on that would be like handing the blueprints for the next generation atomic bomb over to their biggest rivals. From a pure national security standpoint, being totally transparent would be like throwing down your weapons in the middle of a fight.
Now for layer 2. See, beyond just the why of secrecy, there's the how. There's this incredibly deep bureaucratic and legal machine that was built specifically to keep these secrets locked down tight. We're not talking about a simple handshake deal here. This is a fortress built out of regulations. And this whole fortress runs on a really simple but super powerful idea: need to know. It's exactly what it sounds like. If your job doesn't absolutely require you to know something, you don't get to know it. Simple as that. And here's a wild fact for you. Vice President Harry Truman had zero idea the Manhattan Project even existed. He found out after FDR died and he became the president. That's how effective the system is at building walls, even at the very top.
So how do you enforce need to know when you're talking about the most sensitive stuff imaginable? Well, you create what's called a Special Access Program, or a SAP. The best way to think about a SAP is like a legal black box. It's a project so secret that the fact it even exists can be classified, and it's legally walled off from the usual people in Congress who are supposed to be keeping an eye on things. It is the perfect tool for managing a secret you never ever want to get out.
And this is where all the stories about groups like Majestic 12 come from. Now look, whether this specific flowchart is real or not is a whole other debate. But it represents the kind of thing we're talking about. A tiny, independent group that answers to almost no one, maybe just the president, created to handle the entire UFO problem completely off the books.
This quote from Jim Semivan, a former CIA officer, really nails it. He suggests the whole program might get its authority from something called a Presidential Emergency Action Document, or PED. And if that's the case, it means that in what they call an extraordinary circumstance, they are legally not required to tell Congress a single thing. So the system isn't breaking the law. It's playing by a totally different rulebook.
So the big takeaway here is that if you're on the inside, you don't see this as some illegal cover-up. You see it as a legal, necessary, and absolutely vital job you have to do to protect the country. They're not hiding from the law, they're using it. Okay, so we've covered technology and we've covered the bureaucracy. But what if the real reason for the silence is something bigger? Something so fundamental, so reality-bending, that maybe we just can't handle it. This is layer 3, and this is where it gets really strange.
Indigestible. Just let that word sink in for a minute. That's how an insider apparently described the truth to Jim Semivan. That doesn't just mean it's shocking or world-changing. It means it's something our brains, our whole way of understanding the universe, might not even be able to process.
So this really sets up two different ideas about what the secret is. Is it technological, about
nuts and bolts alien spaceships and new ways to create energy? Or is it ontological, meaning it's about the very nature of reality, of consciousness, of our place in the cosmos? More and more, insiders are hinting that we've all been focused on the wrong one. Some of the deepest sources on this topic suggest that this phenomenon isn't something separate from us at all. They say it's deeply connected to our own consciousness. They start talking about quantum theory and this mind-bending idea that consciousness might not be stuck in our brains, but could be part of some universal field that connects everything. The idea that the solid world we see is really just an illusion, mostly empty space and energy.
So if any of that is even remotely true, then chasing lights in the sky is completely missing the point. The phenomenon might not be some visitor from another planet. It could be a mirror reflecting our own consciousness, our own potential back at us. And the indigestible truth might just be that we aren't who or what we think we are. Now, how on earth does a government prepare its citizens for a revelation like that? All right, so let's pull all these layers together. If you're the person in charge of this secret, you're not just worried about one of these things. You're worried about all of them, all hitting at the same time. And that is the disclosure dilemma.
This question, from a scientist named Dr. Eric Walker, who was supposedly tied into all this stuff decades ago. This is the ultimate challenge. This is the one question every single person demanding disclosure has to answer. Okay, the secret's out. Now what's the plan?
Because the day after disclosure probably isn't going to be some big global celebration. It's going to be pure chaos. You'd have billions of dollars in lawsuits flying from aerospace companies instantly. The people who worked on these secret projects would have their names out in the open, making them targets for spies. You'd have insane legal fights over who owns technology that could be worth trillions. Who decides who gets to use it? It would be a complete and utter free-for-all, legally, financially, and globally.
You know, it's the classic problem of the dog that finally catches the car, that chases everything. But what do you do once you've actually caught it? The people holding this secret might genuinely believe that the consequences of telling everyone, the chaos, the conflict, would be way more destructive than the problem of just keeping the secret.
And maybe that leaves us with its one last, unsettling thought. James Lakatsky, who used to run a UFO study for the Defense Intelligence Agency, said that if you're just focused on nuts and bolts type craft, you're never going to solve this. So maybe the ultimate question isn't just why they're silent. Maybe the question is, what if the thing we're all hunting for isn't even alien at all? What if this whole mystery is way deeper and a whole lot more complicated than any of us can even begin to imagine?